If you're outside for more than 15, 20 minutes, you start feeling the congestion, heaviness in your chest.
And I smelled it, that chemical odor that's in the water. So, of course, my heart sank. I'm freaking out. I start to shake.
They're not sure whether to believe everyone or not. And they're concerned for their kids. They're afraid to drink the water. They're concerned for bathing their babies.
I don't want to live in that fear of wondering, are we going to get sick or are we not?
I mean, the damage is already done. We're going to see the repercussions of this for the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Residents in East Palestine, Ohio, are still confused and fearful 2 weeks since a train derailment dumped toxic chemicals into their town, upending their lives. Today, the EPA Administrator, Michael Regan, visited the town for a second time in a week, drinking the water in an attempt to demonstrate that it's safe. But after conflicting information from official sources and with oil sheens coating local streams and the wreck still looming, residents remain wary. In an effort to prevent similar disasters from occurring, today, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg announced a series of rail reforms. Joining us now is the U.S. Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg. Secretary, thank you for being with us. So, I want to ask you, the residents of East Palestine are asking when you are going to pay them a visit. What have you got to say to them?
So I am planning to visit. I have followed the norm in the first days of the crash response of staying out of the way of the independent NTSB. The National Transportation Safety Board has the lead on the investigative part. But we're now entering the phase where this is becoming a policy conversation. So in addition to being ready to take enforcement action against Norfolk Southern to the extent that the investigation turns up any violations, it is also time for us to move forward from a policy perspective. Make sure that we strengthen accountability and strengthen rules on rail safety. Today, I've been calling for 3 sets of actions, actions that the rail industry needs to change, actions that Congress can help us with, and things we're doing right now to take action in the U.S. Department of Transportation, both things we've been working on all along that we're accelerating and new things we're adding to the agenda based on some of the lessons we've already learned from what we saw in East Palestine. You listen to the residents talking about what they've been through. They are concerned, they are frightened, and so is anybody who lives near a rail line, which is true for so many communities, wondering if they too can be kept safe. That is a very important thing to safeguard, and in a town, Washington, D.C., where the freight rail industry has flexed a lot of muscle and wielded a lot of power, now is a chance to make sure that the future is different from the past in terms of their ability to get their way.
Let's talk about the immediate concern here, and that is the health concerns that people have, what they think is conflicting information. As you just saw, some people say they smell things, they see oil sheens. They're worried in a very immediate fashion about health. Where is your department with respect to the EPA and Norfolk Southern and local officials in dealing with people who are worried that they are drinking or breathing contaminated water or air?
Well, I'm in frequent contact with the administrator of the EPA. They, of course, have the lead on the environmental side, and they're doing excellent work to make sure these residents have access to the best testing, the best information, the best science. There's also now federal public health presence on the ground through CDC and Health and Human Services. And so even though our piece of this obviously is the transportation side, I am very concerned to make sure that these residents are getting what they need on the health and environmental side, and really appreciate the work that's been done by local first responders and by our administration in order to make sure they have everything they need. And that's going to continue, long after there's less public attention, less people coming through town and less media coverage, frankly. There still needs to be support for these residents because their concerns are going to continue for years.
As we were researching this, I learned that there were something like 1,049 trail derailments in the United States last year, and I immediately thought that must mean individual rail cars, not actual trains. And no, it turns out that's actual trains. What is it that we need to do to keep trains on the rails? And more importantly, there's some reporting that Norfolk Southern wasn't compelled to tell everybody about this because there wasn't enough hazardous material on the trains. I would think that any amount of hazardous material would be subject to strict regulation.
That's right. This train was subject to some hazardous material requirements and rules, but was not part of the most restricted category. And I think a lot of people are wondering if there's a category called high hazard flammable train, why wouldn't a train like this qualify? That's one of the things that we are looking at the maximum authorities we have. Although I got to say, our authorities really have been constrained over the years by Congress, which is why we're doing two things at once. We're making the most of the authorities we have and calling on Congress to give us a stronger hand here. And I'll give you a couple examples of that. There was a push by my department under a couple administrations ago to get more fortified tank cars out on the rails. That was supposed to be done by 2025. Congress, I think responding to industry lobbying, pushed that out to 2029. I think that date needs to be brought back up. Also, there's the issue of how tough the fines are. So even when we catch a railroad company in an egregious violation that leads to a loss of life, the most that we can assess per violation is about $250,000. And for a multi-billion-dollar company like Norfolk Southern or the other major freight railroads, I just don't think that's enough to have the deterrent effect that these fines need to have. So those are some of the things Congress can help with. One of the things we're working on as a department is a rule that the previous administration froze, but that we restarted when we got here, to set minimum standards for crew on board these trains. You know, these freight railroads have cut and cut and cut when it comes to the workforce. Fewer safety positions, fewer maintenance positions. And now they have actually been pushing to be allowed to have just one person on a train, even a train that could be a mile long or longer. So we're developing the rules that would require there to be at least two. We're going through that legal process right now, but it's just one example of the things that we are doing with the powers that we have, even while we're calling on Congress to help us get a stronger hand.
I have to ask you, I'm here in Kyiv, Ukraine, and one of the things the mayor of East Palestine said that he called on President Biden to visit East Palestine before he went to Ukraine. He said that was the biggest slap in the face that tells you right now he doesn't care about us, talking about President Biden. So he can send every agency he wants to, but I found out this morning that, and one of the briefings that he was in the Ukraine giving millions of dollars away to people over there, not to us, and I'm furious. Look, to Americans who have a train derailment, particularly with hazardous chemicals in their community, you can see why this feels like the biggest priority for them and perhaps 2 generations to follow if there's hazardous chemicals out there. What do you say to people who see the president's visit to Ukraine but don't see you or the president in East Palestine?
Well, the biggest thing I want residents of East Palestine to know is that they're not alone. Our department's personnel were on the ground from within the first hours of the incident. They've got multiple federal agencies on the ground, partnering with the state, partnering with local first responders. And this has the attention of the entire administration and will for many years to come. Look, the people of East Palestine deserve accountability from Norfolk Southern. That's something that the EPA announced today, the level that they're holding Norfolk Southern to. It's something that we're going to pursue to the maximum extent allowed by law. And I'll tell you, I am planning to go, and when I'm on the ground, it's going to be about action. It's not going to be about show or politics, because I can very much relate to how a mayor feels, having been mayor, and noticed that when we had disasters in our community, there were 2 kinds of people who showed up. People who were there because they had a specific role to play, job to do, and difference to make and wanted to help, and people who were there because they wanted to look good. This administration has been on the ground from day one, and that support for East Palestine will not go away.
What are you able to do to get clarity to the people on the ground in East Palestine about whether they can drink their water and what they have to do? Because one of the sources of tension has been conflicting information.
Well, I think the most important thing is to make sure that they have access to good science, good testing, and good data. And that's part of what my colleague, Administrator Michael Regan, who I know cares deeply about this and is on the ground or has been today, one of the things he's focused on. People need to be able to get access to that testing. The municipal water has been tested and, as I understand it, found safe. Many people want to know if their wells are also safe and have been given access to testing as well. Look, this is one of the most basic things that all of us need to know that we're safe, is that the water we're drinking is safe. And so it's a very, very understandable concern by residents. The best thing that anyone can do to offer them clarity is to get them access to good tests to scientifically confirm the quality of their water.